بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Alhamdulillah. And it's really beautiful to see our community coming together and developing programs, developing resource guides, and lots of resources for us to be using at home. Just as a note, if you're taking notes, there's a couple of organizations that have some of these toolkits, so to speak. FYI, Family Youth Institute. And since this is an event for the youth, I would highly encourage you to become familiar with that organization. It's called the Family Youth Institute. And if you just type in FYI Muslim or Family Youth Institute, Muslim Islam, it should come up. They have a lot of really good resources, a lot of great infographics. They do a lot of research on the Muslim community here in the US and Canada, North America. And they present that in papers, also in infographics. So it's a really great website with a lot of resources, and you can sign up for their newsletter. Also, Yaqeen Institute has put together a lot of various resources, and there's more as well. So what I wanted to speak about this week is to pick up on something that I had mentioned last week, and I want to really expand that a little bit more. And I want to give about just a lecture of about 30 minutes and then open it up for questions and really try to have this more interactive with the folks who are joining us live. So one of the things that I had mentioned in the class last week was that staying at home, being on, lockdown or shelter in place, which is now, last week it was just the Bay Area. Between last week and this week, now we've gone all of California, Illinois, Connecticut just today, Connecticut today. I think a couple of days ago, it says about a fourth or a third of America are shelter in place by law. But there's a lot more who are sheltering in place just voluntarily. So a lot of people are dealing with this, and everybody's trying to cope with this. I mean, we're seeing drastic changes across the board. Even something that we've become accustomed to, like Amazon Prime shipments being overnight. Now things are taking about a month if it's not an essential service. So that's something nobody had expected to see. And of course, our masajid have closed down all over the world, really, since last week till now. Last week, or up until last week, there was a lot of debates going on whether or not we should close down the masajid. By now, from last week to this week, now we have Mecca and Medina have both closed down. I'm sure many of you have seen those pictures. It's actually pretty heart-wrenching to see the gates to the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ being closed and just shut down. No prayers are being offered there. Although I did get a message that they are having the regular imam go in there and with a small group of people continue on the prayers. So alhamdulillah, the prayers are still going on, but it's just very few people that are going in there. Okay, so last week, one of the things that I had mentioned in the talk, and I saw a lot of questions come in the feed was about the 6 M's, the 6 letter M's, and I'll discuss exactly what those are. But they're something that we find in our Muslim tradition in the literature in terms of trying to better ourselves and refine our character. And during this time where we're stuck at home and we're really in close proximity to our siblings, to our parents, maybe to other family members, in a way that we weren't that close before, because we had all of these breaks in the routine. We get up, we might have some time together at breakfast, and then we all go on our separate ways, some to school, some to college, some to work. And then we come home in the evening, and then we have our routine. And then on the weekends, it might be gatherings or go to the masjid. All of that has been cut out, and we're really now stuck at home. So while there are definitely drawbacks about not being able to go out and maintain our regular routine and go to the masajid, now we can turn into having routines in the house. And I had briefly mentioned this last week about turning our houses into monasteries, places where just like monks of the past or even today, they would stay in their houses or stay in a small structure and just maintain a routine. And one of the reasons why they would do that, and they would have these monasteries set apart or set away from society, is that they did not want to be distracted by the dunya, by the regular, regular life. If we have access to the markets, if we have access to entertainment, if we have access to visiting people, visiting friends, basic outings, even things like sports and so forth. Here in Union City, where I live, we received a text saying that just clearing my voice, inshallah, it's not corona, no fever, no shortness of breath so far. But they've closed down all of the parks, so now even that as an option is not there. For what the monks, whether they were men or women, would do, they would go to a monastery, be set apart from society, not distracted by those other things, and they would focus on refining themselves. Now, one thing I have to mention is, and this is a very famous saying of, and a lot of people have heard it, is "La rahbaniyata fil Islam." There is no monasticism in Islam. So we don't. Part of the tradition of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is that we do interact with this world. We don't cut ourselves off from the world. There was even some of the Sahaba who came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they said that they wanted to start some practices where they cut themselves off from the world, from work, from marriage, from having families, from having all of these things that they would say or feel is a distraction from being able to focus on the ibadah. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that he engages in those things. He gets married, he has families, he's still involved in the dunya. So for the Muslim, and following the path and the example of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we engage in the dunya and we go out about in the world, but we try to maintain, we try to work to detach ourselves from those things. So we have the cars and the tools and the jobs and the wealth, and we work to get those things so that we don't have to turn around and ask people for things. But at the same time, we don't want to be attached to those things. I briefly watched there was a talk of a monk, a Hindu monk, and he was in a monastery in Hawaii, of all places. I mean, mashallah, if somebody's going to be in a monastery, Hawaii would be a wonderful place to be, right? I'll give you a very clear picture of what Jannah might be with all those tropical forests and so forth. So he said that somebody came to him to ask a question, and he said, well, I could give you the advice, but I would rather give you the advice of my teacher. So why don't you send me an email and I'll respond to you? And she was shocked. She said, how can you be a monk? And he has all the robes and the beads and so forth. How can you be a monk and have a computer, or have, these technology, and you have computers and so send emails? So she said, can you as a monk send an email? He said, yes, as long as there's no attachments. And what he meant was, it's a play on words, because the attachments to the emails. But for the monk, one of the things that they're trying to do is detach from this world. So one of the things that we're doing as Muslims is we are involved in the world, but we're trying to detach ourselves. And there's things that happen during our lives throughout the year that give us that opportunity. Ramadan is one of them. Well, this is almost like a Ramadan, like an i'tikaf, so to speak. So how can we do that? How can we're now in this situation where we're detached from the dunya. Now we can really focus on ourselves. So when the monk goes into his or her monastery, because they don't have all of these distractions, and they also have a regular routine, right? So if we had to go out and about, and we had school and we had work and we had this and we have that, we have all of those things determining our schedule. But now when we're stuck in our house for 3, maybe 4, even more weeks, every day kind of blends into one. I mean, how many people have kind of like, they have to say to themselves, is today Monday or Sunday, or is today Saturday? I mean, those days are blurring into each other. At least for me, that's, they're starting to blur into each other. And I met somebody yesterday and we was talking, it was Sunday. And so then he said, yeah, it's going to come out on Monday, which I was thinking to myself, why didn't you say it's going to come out tomorrow? Um, and he said, yeah, it's, today, Friday, like he was referring to Sunday as Friday, and then Monday, tomorrow is or Monday as, it's going to come out on Monday, as if it's a couple days away still. So we have this regular routine. Now, once we get that regular routine, we can start really analyzing our actions, just like a scientist. For those of you who have done any science projects or watched science projects on TV or read about science projects, one of the things that the scientists have to do is they have to be able to isolate things. And they have to remove things that might cause inconsistencies so that they can see exactly what's happened. If they're going to analyze 2 or 3 petri dishes or 2 or 3 test tubes, and they're going to put 1 drop in this one and 2 drops in this one and maybe no drops in the last one, they have to make sure that there's nothing else that would get involved in this thing. So we're isolating those things, so then they can also see what's going on in this one as opposed to this one. Well, that's what's happening in our daily schedules. We've detached ourselves from the dunya. We've removed these outside distractions. We've also have a regular routine, which is another thing the scientist has to do. If he puts he's got the different petri dishes, all has to maintain the same temperature. They all have to be exposed to the same thing. If one is covered and the other is not covered, he has to notice that. If he wants to see more consistency, he or she has to put covers on all, and so on and so forth. I think you get the picture. So our days are turning into that. Our days are turning into a mini science lab in our house, where we can now look at our own actions. We can see on a daily basis what we really become when we don't have the distractions and we have a regular routine. Now we have time to focus. Okay, what is it that I want to work on? Last week I mentioned different things, different ideas, just a few ideas of the many things that we could do, whether it's increase in our knowledge, increase in our worship, increase in our interactions with other people, in a good way. Increase in a skill or whatever it might be, get caught up on homework, get caught up on reading, whatever it might be. So one of the tools that I mentioned last week is called what I refer to as the 6 M's. And it's something I didn't come up with this. This has been developed by the early Muslims of our tradition. And it's 6 stages. The first one is musharatah, which is setting goals or putting down conditions. At the beginning of the day, you get up for Fajr, or when you get up in the morning, and you set aside some time where it's actually quiet and you don't have distractions. And now that you've seen the regular routine, especially in this last week, you know where there are those pockets of silence, where maybe everybody's asleep or everybody's engaged in something or everybody's doing something, and you can just go off to a corner, or you don't have to go off to a corner. You can just sit and think when you have some time to really think. And that's really a very precious time. That time where you don't have distractions, you don't have bills to pay, you don't have homework to do, you don't have somebody asking you to do something, you don't have something that you need to do yourself. You just have this focused, undistracted time. That's very, very valuable. And it's one of the things that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that we'll be asked about. Well, he said we'll be asked about our time in general, how we spent it. But this is, out of all of our time that we're spending, this is one of the most valuable things that we can spend, when we just have some time to reflect. And this is one of the best types of ibadah. Unfortunately, it doesn't get a lot of advertisement, so to speak. Again, it's just I should have had a cup of water here. If I was in the masjid and started clearing my throat, somebody would bring me a bottle of water. But now we're virtual, so maybe somebody can send me a virtual bottle of water. So you have this time to reflect. In Arabic, it's called fikr. Fa, kaf, ra. Or a transliteration would be F-I-K-R. Fikr. So we have dhikr, which is a reminder, but we also have fikr. And you'll see this mentioned a lot in the Quran. Inna fi khalq as-samawati wal ard, in the creation of the heavens and the earth, are things that we should reflect on. And the mention of tafakkur is mentioned very often in the Quran. But what is tafakkur? It's one of the easiest forms of worship. You don't have to fast from morning till evening. You don't have to do wudu and pray. You don't have to read a lot of Quran. Just reflect. And there's so many different things that we can reflect on. We can reflect on the creation of Allah, but we can also reflect on ourselves. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that, there's always this mention of the heavens and the earth, the heavens and the earth, the heavens and the earth. Reflect on the heavens of the earth. وَفِي أَنفُسِكُمْ, and in yourselves. One is the creation, the khalq that Allah has made. Like, look, subhanAllah, look at this creation. One of the things he tells us is, he says, look at how Allah has made your fingers even. كَيْفَ نُسَوِّيَ بَنَانَهُ. The word in Arabic for fingertips is banana, banan. Bananahu is his fingertips. So maybe the word for banana came from the Arabic word fingertips, banan, the fingertips. Allah says in the Quran, hasn't the human being seen how we have made his fingertips equal? Somebody might say, well, they're not equal. Well, all you got to do is this, right? Look at that. 4 fingertips, all different heights. You go like this, and now they're all equal. And that's one of the things that Allah tells us in the Quran. Doesn't the human being reflect on this? Look at this. Did this happen by chance? So we have our own body just to look at. You close your fist and you're like, subhanAllah, look, because of the perfection of the distance in between each of the joints, you can have these different length of fingertips, and now they're the same height. I sometimes, if I'm teaching little kids, I'll say, hey, you want to see a magic trick? I can make all of my fingers the same height. Oh, and then you go like this. Another way to think about this ayah as well is that every single person's fingertips are unique to that person. So, and the other thing, subhanAllah, if you look up, there's I don't know the name of this, but they take they magnify the image of your fingertips, and it looks like a mountain range. If you took a picture of a mountain range like the Rocky Mountains or the Himalayas, and you took a microscopic picture of what your fingertips look like, it looks like a mountain range. So we have so many things just right in front of us, and that's just our fingertips that we can think of. So that's the khalq. In Arabic, it's kha, lam, qaf, the creation. But we can also think about our khuluq, our character, and reflect on our character and how Allah has made us with different dispositions. Some people are extroverts. Some people are introverts. Some people are extroverts sometimes and introverts at other time, and vice versa. Some people have, some people are very, they like to talk with other people and they're very bubbly and so forth. And other people are they like to be, they're reserved. Some people, everybody has their personality. And this is something that we should reflect on, that Allah has made you in a special, unique way that no other human being on the face of this earth has ever been created, with your khalq, with your creation of how you look, or with your khuluq, or with your character, and how Allah has made you, your basic character, your basic inclination. We still have to refine it. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the refinement of the character. I'll tell you a funny story. Sometimes, there's this idea of the doppelganger, somebody who looks just like you or very similar to you. And maybe some of you have had that experience. And I've had an experience where people, I meet somebody and they look very similar. If they see a picture, it's like, oh, wow, you look very similar. And you can have similarities. You can have like a body double, but you'll never have somebody exactly like you. So think about that. When you think, if there's ever times where you feel that you're lost in the sea of humanity, and that there's not really much out there for you to stand apart in, just remember that Allah has created you in a very unique way. No other person is like you, and you have something to reflect on and to also to develop, to refine. Okay, so now we have this reflection on our creation. We also want to reflect on our khalq. So now we have this regular routine. You're seeing how you're interacting with your parents. Think about, I'll take that as an example. See how you react to your parents at different times of the day. Think about how you react to them maybe when you're hungry, or when you're sleepy, or when you've just got up, or when you got a lot on your mind. How are you reacting to them? Good ways, bad ways. Maybe not good, not bad, just normal, but you could improve on it. Your interactions with your siblings, maybe even your interaction with yourself. There's this term that that you may have heard of called self-care. Taking care of yourself. And that's another thing. How are you doing to yourself? Are you some people in their homes, they help out their siblings and their parents out so much that they forget to take care of themselves. So how much self-care are you giving yourself? And in the Quran, it stresses this point, stresses the point that we should take care of ourselves. Take care, save yourselves and your family from the fire. So Allah is telling us, showing us those priorities. Save yourselves and then your families. Just like in the airport where, if you've ever been on an airplane and they have those the instructions on how to deal with if there's ever a loss of cabin air pressure, those masks drop down. And they say if you're traveling with a young child, you should put on your mask first and then you help out other people. So just so that we can make sure that we're well, so that we can help other people. If we're not well, if we're not breathing well, we can't help somebody else. So we got to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves. All right, so we're thinking about how we're interacting with others. We're thinking about how we're interacting with ourselves. And now maybe, if I were to ask if this was a live audience and maybe we had, actually it is live, but I mean in person, we might ask, is there something that you would like to share that you could improve on yourself? And I think everybody, you don't have to type it in or share, but I think if everybody was asked that question right now, this very moment, say, what could you improve today? Not in 5 years, not in 10 years. What could you improve today? Or since it's nighttime, tomorrow. And no matter what has happened in the past, right? Doesn't matter how long you've had this habit or how long you've not done this thing. What is something that you could and that you want to improve tomorrow? So now we isolate that. Let's just pick one thing, just for the sake of an example. Somebody says, you know what? I don't really pray the nafil prayer before or after the fard. I just kind of rush through the prayer and I don't have time for the sunnah. So let me focus on that. Or that's a ibadah, that's a form of worship. Maybe it's an interaction with somebody. I've noticed about myself that sometimes I snap if I'm hungry, or if I'm haven't had my, or I learned this term recently, hangry. It's anger caused by hunger. So you're going to isolate that, which again, this is what the scientists, you're looking at your daily routine and you notice, oh, wow, every day about 10 o'clock in the morning when I haven't had breakfast, I snap at my brother or my sister, or I snap at my mom or my dad, or I just, I just feel frustrated. Well, maybe it's hunger, and anger caused by hunger is hangry. So what one doctor mentioned to me that term. I was like, oh, that's a good term, hangry. So maybe somebody sees in their daily routine, I snap at people when I do this, or I don't pray my nafilas, or I would like to have more focus in my prayer. Whatever it might be, just focus it. It could be a couple of different things. So when you start your day off, the first thing you're going to do is musharata, which you're setting a goal. And it should be a very reasonable goal. Don't try to, conquer the mountain. Just start with something really, really, really small. There's one book on changing habits, and it says if the thing that you should try to change is something that you can do in less than a minute. And an example they give is that if you want to, say if you want to start flossing your teeth, you don't say, okay, I'm going to start flossing my teeth. Just say, I'm going to floss one tooth. That's it. And you commit to it. You say, okay, I'm going to floss one tooth. That's it. I don't have to floss the rest. Well, I think we all know what's going to happen when you finally make that commitment. You say, okay, I'm just going to floss one tooth. And you get the whatever tool it is that you're going to use, the string or those little tools that they sell, the little toothpicks or the little things with the dental floss already in them, and you just floss one tooth. Well, what's going to happen? You're going to floss the next one and floss the whole thing. The point is, though, pick off something that's bite-sized that you can really manage. So you've figured out all of these different things that you want to change about yourself. You can't change everything, but you're going to pick one thing, and it's going to be bite-sized. It's something you can handle. You can change it in a day. It's not like somebody says, okay, I want to memorize Surah Al-Baqarah. Well, that's going to take a while. So instead of saying Surah Al-Baqarah, let's just say, okay, I want to memorize 3 ayahs of Surah Al-Baqarah. Or maybe you get a little bit too excited and say, I'm going to memorize 15 ayahs of Surah Al-Baqarah, almost, or 15 lines, almost 1 page of Surah Al-Baqarah. Just say, okay, maybe if you think you can handle it, great. If that's bite size for you, more power to you. But bite off whatever you can handle. So we're saying that removing that snappy interaction, adding the nafila prayer. Remember, a 2 rak'ah nafila prayer only takes a minute or two, a couple minutes. It's not a big thing. And then, or the few lines of Surah Al-Baqarah, or maybe some ahadith, especially in this time. You know, a lot of the recommendations about how to deal with coronavirus is about, like I saw on Google, they said the 5 things: wash your hand, don't touch your face. What were the other things? Stay at home if you can. Drink plenty of water, and there was one more, I can't remember what it is, but we've heard all of those things. Well, then what about the spiritual element? You know, are we increasing our dua that would protect us during this time? And there's a number of dua that you can find for protection that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam made. So maybe learn one of those every couple of days. Learn a new dua from the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam for protection from the spiritual realm. There's some really beautiful videos going around of what we saw maybe last week. You might have seen some videos going around of all these apartment buildings in Italy where people are stuck now, and they go out on their balconies and they start singing, or they have instruments. And it was interesting to see that humanity coming together and people reconnecting and so forth. In Morocco, they have people in these huge apartment complexes, and across the cities, one person will say, Allahu Akbar. And then the whole city, you'll just hear this echo of hundreds or maybe even thousands of takbirs, Allahu Akbar. Or people read Fatiha together and then read some du'as for protection, du'as for protection. So if you look up du'a, D-U-A, for protection, you'll find some of those mentioned. All right, so we have isolated those things. You list them out, and you say, this is what I want. This is what I want to change. I have my goals, and you don't have to write it down on a pen or a paper. Just set it out at the beginning of the day. You say, okay, this is what I want to work on. Now comes the second M. Now you've set your goals, you've set your conditions, your musharata. The next thing is you're going to be doing 2 things. Muraqaba, which is watching yourself. It comes from raqaba, to be vigilant. Just like if a person's in a watchtower or in a fortress and he or she is looking out, scanning the horizon, being vigilant, looking for the approach of enemies. So that's what you're going to do. It's like you have your fortress, is your body, is yourself. You got this goal that you've set, and now you're going to be vigilant. When it's time to do that thing, or when it's time to not do that thing, you want to be aware. Now you're watching yourself. And you're struggling too, which is mujahada. And I'll type these into the box as well. But the muraqabah is you're watching yourself. You're being vigilant. You're being aware of your actions. You're being aware of your feelings. And this awareness is going to become very important, whether you succeed or whether you fail. If you're able to do that thing, or you're not able to do whatever the outcome is, it's really important the results that you get from this scientific observation of yourself, because you want to say, was I able to achieve that? All right. And now you're struggling. You're trying to motivate yourself. You're gonna lean towards, human beings lean towards laziness. And so if it's something that you have to do, then you have to do, it's jihadun nafs. It's struggling against the self. Yourself wants to incline one way, and you're struggling to push it the other way. It's just like if you're riding a horse and the horse is veering off to one side, you want to push it towards the other side. You want to bring it back towards the other side. And that struggle and that tug and the constant tug, or if you started driving a car, it's not like you just hold the steering wheel like this. If you notice the steering wheel, if you watch somebody on the steering wheel, they're going back and forth. Well, you're applying force. Force doesn't mean it's like really strong. You're just applying some amount of force. And so to keep that steering wheel straight. So I get on the freeway, my goal that I've set is that I want to stay in my lane and I want to get to my destination. And the whole time I'm watching, I'm being aware, shouldn't be distracted. And then I'm also making sure that I'm struggling. If the car is going right, I'm going to go left. If it's left, and then I'll go back and forth. If you've ever walked on a beach, one of the very amazing things, you might walk on some sand and think you're walking in a straight line. If you turn around and look behind you, what will you see? How will the footprints look? Imagine that. How will your footprints look if you're walking on a beach? Will it be a straight line like a soldier? No. What it's going to be is going to be a curved line, because you've set your goal in front and you're maintaining your awareness to make sure that you have that goal in front of you, and you're constantly readjusting to make sure that you stay in your goal. So that's the jihad of the nafs. You're going to be readjusting and struggling against yourself. So you do those two. So now we got 3 of the M's. Now at the end of the day, once you have, again, some quiet time, dinner has been done, Isha, maybe you've prayed Isha, everybody's kind of settled into their nighttime routine. Maybe it's when you're in bed and before you go to sleep and you just think, maybe it's right after Salat al-Isha or Salat al-Witr if you're praying it at the beginning of the night. But at the end of the night, now you're going to do the 2 of the next M's, which is muhasaba. Comes from hisab, to take account. So now you're going to think to yourself, okay, I set this goal at the beginning of the day. How did I do on that? Did I accomplish it? Was it just one thing that you had to do during the day, or was it something that was at multiple times? So you want to take yourself to account. You say, did I do it or not? You're just asking yourself that question. Did I reach my goal or not? And also part of the accounting, and this is why it's important to make sure that you have that vigilance. You're constantly aware of your actions. You want to know whether what you did or why was it that you were able to accomplish your goal, or why did you trip and fall? Because then that's going to help you adjust and maybe bring the goals down, or maybe increase them, or you're going to increase your struggle, your jihad the next day. It's going to make you have those adjustments. Then the other M is mu'ataba, or reprimand. So you just give yourself a reprimand. You don't have to say it out loud, but you just tell yourself, you have this conscious realization, that was wrong. This is what I should have done. And this is what I did. And that was wrong. That's all you're doing. You're just telling yourself, I shouldn't have done that. And you can talk to yourself, you shouldn't have done that. That wasn't right. That's called a mu'ataba. The next one is mu'aqaba, which is a punishment. But before you start thinking about, okay, punishment, you're going to hit yourself, or no, it's not that you're going to punish yourself. It's just that if there is something, I'll give you an example. Say somebody had as a goal, I want to decrease my backbiting. I talk about other people, I gossip. I want to decrease. And so if the person didn't meet their goal for that day, the next day they say, you know what? What I'm going to do is I'm going to do an extra decrease on speech. I was going to call my friend. Now I'm not going to call that person. I'm not going to give myself the reward of doing that thing. Or it might be something like, if a person likes a dessert every day in the morning or in the evening or in the midday or whatever, I'm not going to give it to myself. You do something you punish yourself, but not in a way that harms you. So when we say punishment, we're saying holding back on some type of a reward. So again, it's just make sure that's very clear. You're not harming yourself in any way. Harming your body or harming your mind is haram. Is prohibited. We have a duty, we have an obligation to protect our bodies and to protect our minds. So it's just like holding yourself back from something. So that's the mu'aqaba. At the same time, if you've done something, you can reward yourself. You can say, you know what? Great job. You met your goal for today. And so tonight or tomorrow, just like a parent, imagine what your parent, if they set a goal for you and you meet that goal, you get this or you get that or you get this. If you don't meet that goal, you're going to lose this, you're going to lose this, you're going to lose that. Do the same thing for yourself. So those are the 6 M's. Musharata, you set your conditions in the morning. Muraqabah, you're watching yourself during the time, you're struggling to make sure you stay on the path. That's the mujahada. At the end of the day, you do the muhasabah, you do the self audit, you take account for what you've done, um, and you reprimand yourself, and then you might punish yourself. Now, you could do this in the morning, throughout the day, in the evening, and this could also be happening throughout the day as well. So you might bring in, okay, you did that nafila, I want to, whatever, uh, I want to go online and play this game. I want to go online and play the game. Okay, tell yourself, if you want to go online and play the game, make sure you do that prayer that you said, or memorize that hadith that you wanted to memorize, or um, uh, if you wanted to work on how you interact with your siblings or with your parents. Okay, you did a good job. All right, you get a reward, and so you could be doing this throughout the day. I hope that was that overview of the 6 M's was clear. It gives you a good structure of how to basically work on our habits. You could have basic goals, and sometimes you could even have a book, or if you have a phone, put it as a note on your phone, and you can even start checking things off at the end of the day and readjust. If something is too hard, you might say, okay, let me wait until it's summertime on that one. Or let me wait until Ramadan on that one. And let me bring something that I was planning in Ramadan, let me bring that one forward. Or let me decrease this, or let me increase this. And you can kind of track it. Just like a scientist would do, we're analyzing ourselves, our character, and we're refining the character. So now with that, I would like to leave the last 15 minutes for questions. So you can type them into the chat over here. And while I'm waiting for that, I'm just going to so feel free. One of the other thoughts that I had in terms of a habit is giving sadaqah, giving charity on a regular basis, and not just when there's a campaign going on online and you see it. Oh, let me give sadaqah. That's great. Keep those habits up. Or somebody asks you for help, or brings a cause to your attention and you want to help out. That's great as well. Or you go to the masjid, or you see a homeless person. You see those points that maybe they're not regular, but they do occur. Maybe they are regular, but just maybe not, they're not as often, like every single day. But what you should try to do is get into the habit of having some amount of sadaqah that you give every single day. And this is for a number of reasons. This is because the Prophet ﷺ encouraged us to do this. He said every single day that the sun, every single day when we come into the day, every one of our joints has a, there's a sadaqah that we should give for the blessing of every single one of our joints, and that's hundreds of joints in our bodies. But it doesn't have to be money. It could be a smile. So we could change something like that. Change your demeanor, bringing some happiness to another person. That's a sadaqah. Teaching somebody something. If you have a younger sibling, and it doesn't have to be just Islamic knowledge. It could be anything. They're struggling with their math. They need some help, and you might be busy, but you said, I'm going to take out some time and I'm going to help my younger brother, or maybe my older brother or sister, my sibling, learn something. So teaching something is a sadaqah. So you want to get in the habit of we all do, of giving out a sadaqah on a regular basis, and giving out some money is also good. Any type of sadaqah repels afflictions and trials and tribulations and diseases and so forth. The Prophet ﷺ said that that sadaqah will actually dua repels evil, and sadaqah is also something that can repel harm from coming to us. Sadaqah is also something that we can heal our sick with. The Prophet ﷺ said, heal your sick people with sadaqah. So we can give out sadaqah with the intention of Allah healing those who are struggling with the coronavirus right now, and to protect those who don't have it from getting it. And then we do this on a regular basis. Okay, any questions? I see there's about 10 people watching live. And while I'm waiting for questions, I'm just going to pull up a few things. I had mentioned the FYI. So the Family Youth Institute, it's called thefyi.org. So I just put that into the chat box. And then I had also mentioned dua for protection. Yeah, so if you type in dua for protection, there are a lot of dua that come up. One that I was thinking of that would be good to have as a habit at any time would be the ones the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to recite in the mornings and in the evenings. And so let me just look that up to put that in the chat. Bismillah alladhi la yadurru ma'a ismihi shay'un fil ardi wa la fis sama'i wa huwa as-sami'ul 'alim. And as an interesting note, I learned these du'as on my first couple of days that I was in Mauritania. I went to study in West Africa in 1998, and it was my first trip ever. I didn't know what to expect, and here I am about a week into the trip. I'm going out into the desert. We're going to hike into the village. It's about a 12 or 14-hour hike, but we leave after Asr. We're going to travel for about 4 or 5 hours, camp at the base of this mountain. The next day, we're going to climb up into the mountain and go to the school where I would study, and then I stayed there for about a little over 4 years, off and on, coming back to my family here in the Bay Area. But before we left the main road, the asphalt paved road, and went into the outback, into the Badia, one of the brothers who was traveling with us, he said, "Do you know the du'as of protection? Because we're going to go out there in the desert, and there's scorpions, and there's snakes, poisonous snakes, and there's hyenas and jackals and all of these things." And so I said, no. So he taught me, and I remember exactly where I was on that road where he taught me. He said, say this, Bismillah alladhi la yadurru ma'a ismihi shay'un fil ardi wa la fis sama'i wa huwa as-sami'ul 'alim. That's one of the du'as that you can make. And that's where I learned it. And so now if you don't know that dua, this time during the coronavirus outbreak, we should learn those du'as. Okay, so here's a question. Are we allowed to watch movies or TikTok? So that's a very good question. Entertainment is something that human beings have had since the beginning of time. And it's something that even at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there was entertainment. The Sahaba used to entertain themselves. At one time, in the very famous hadith, there were some Abyssinians who were dancing in the masjid. And it was a type of dance that it was actually like a method of training for war. And to give you an idea, if you're not familiar with capoeira, which is this Brazilian martial arts, it looks like a dance, but it's actually a martial art. So that's, to me, when I read the description and from what I've heard from my shuyukh, that dance that they did at the masjid was not just dancing; it was actually a martial art form of dancing, because it involved even weapons and so forth. But they were doing this in the masjid, and Aisha radiallahu anha was watching from one of the doors of the masjid, because the house of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was adjoined, connected to the masjid, and so he had opened up the door a little bit for her to look out, and she said she had rested her head on his arm or his shoulder, and she watched this dance of the Abyssinians. So there's no issue with entertainment as a concept. The issue would be the content. Like, what is the content? And this discussion comes up similarly with music. When people say, can we listen to music? One of the most important things is saying, what is the content? What is being talked about in there? So let's just talk, before we even go into other things, other detailed the fiqh of some of those issues. Let's talk about what is the content, like what is being advertised, what is being sold. Just remember, everybody's trying to sell you something. If there's an Instagram person or somebody on TikTok or somebody on Twitter or somebody on Facebook or somebody on YouTube, they want to get more likes, they want to get more watches, they want to get more subscriptions. They're selling you something. They're selling you their jokes if they're a comedian, their music if they're musicians, their looks if they're a model. They want your attention and your focus, and they're trying to buy your time. It's not costing you anything, but you are, by scrolling and staying on that, you are giving them something. You're giving their time. So everybody's trying to sell you something to get you to look at them. It's just like if you've ever been down to San Francisco at the wharf, and there's all those people who are on the sides of the wharf, and somebody's doing some handicraft thing, and somebody's got a guitar, and somebody's doing a robot dance, and everybody is trying to get your attention. Or you go to the mall and there's advertisements, and this store has this, and this store has this sale, and this phone has this, and everybody's trying to grab your attention. So when you go into a phone store, you know exactly what they're going to try to sell you: phones, accessories to phones, and services. You go to a grocery store, you know what they're trying to sell you: something to eat, something to drink, something to spice up your food. You know exactly what it is. But then you just have to figure out, okay, what exactly are they trying to sell? When you're watching a movie, when you're watching some TikTok things, when you're watching a Twitter feed or an Instagram feed, ask yourself, what is this person trying to sell me? What are they trying to get me to do, believe, or like? And that's a really important question. So again, going back to that muraqabah, that vigilance, you don't even have to, the vigilance and self-awareness is not just in trying to have those habits change. Also be aware of your surroundings. So you're scrolling through your feed, you stick on something and you look at it and it catches your attention. One thing you can ask yourself is why? Why did this catch my attention? And why is this person trying to catch my attention? And now the next question, is this something that's good for me? Or is it something that's bad for me? Or is it something that's doubtful? Because the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, the haram is clear and the halal is clear. And in between them are some doubtful matters. So I think most of us know on those movies or the TikToks what's clearly haram. The clearly halal, that's maybe a little bit less clear because there's all these other messages. I think the majority of what is out there is it's either in the doubtful or in the haram area. But we want to ascertain, is this really good? Is this good for me to be watching, or is this bad for me, or am I in doubt? And what are they trying to sell me? What are they trying to teach me? What are they trying to influence me? One of the words they use for these people who are self-made stars on whatever platform it is, they call them influencers, right? They influence makeup, clothing, comedy, music, culture, news, whatever it is. They're trying to influence you. That's actually one of the names of, or a similar name to, the shaitan. The shaitan is trying to influence us as well. At the same time, we also know the angels try to influence us. I started out talking about fikr, or reflection, and the importance of reflection. Well, one of the things that we understand from our tradition as Muslims is that the angels around us that are in the unseen, they will try to influence us to do good. And they'll start at what might be the hardest on us. So they'll say, "O slave of Allah, get up and pray." They're just whispering these thoughts into our hearts in the unseen. So if you've ever been sitting around saying, "You know what? I think I should get up and pray," that might be an angel giving you that thought, trying to influence you. And if the angel doesn't get a response from the human, then he's going to go to the next thing. He says, "Okay, you didn't get up to pray. I understand. That's a little bit hard. Then get up to do dhikr, to do some reminder of Allah. If you don't do that, okay, then do fikr, do reflection." So that's what you want to say. Is this influence? So somebody mentioned here, if you watch Muslim TikTok, it's good. Okay, there are some people, and I'm not really familiar with that platform, the TikTok platform, and what's on there. But if there's somebody on there that's influencing good and has good messages and is trying to spread goodness, then that's good. Then you can watch that TikTok. If you have a movie that's a documentary or a movie that's trying to bring a really, really good message, great. But if you have, but pay attention to some of the subtleties, some of the little messages, the little lessons that are being given in the cartoons, in the media. Be aware of these things. Be savvy media consumers. That's my advice. Be savvy media consumers. Any other questions before we end tonight? Very good question to end. Thank you, sister, for asking that question. Okay, if there are no final questions, we'll go, out of respect for the time. This is going to be from 8 to 9. I appreciate those who came at 8. I had some technical difficulties just signing on. But next week, it'll be the same time, 8 to 9. The way that the suggested structure was last 15 minutes would be for questions. So if you have questions about this week's lesson or other questions or the other weeks, you can feel free to ask them in the next coming live session. Jazakumullahu khairan. May Allah bless you for attending and listening, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all of our actions. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us during this time, and protect the Muslims, and protect Bani Adam, protect the sons and the children of Adam, protect humanity from this disease, and prevent it from this virus, and prevent it from spreading in the way that is feared, and to protect our young, and to protect our old, protect our men, and protect our women, protect Bani Adam. This is really a time where we should be looking at humanity and setting aside differences, and looking at the beauty of humanity and the good that's coming out of humanity during this time. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.